So good evening, everyone. Bonsoir à tous. My name is Jason Koulis, and I'm a Program and Project Management Officer in our Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Development Department at the City of Ottawa. Welcome to the statutory public meeting for the draft plan subdivision for 147 Langstaff Drive, and we appreciate you joining us this evening. Yeah, next slide, please, Andy. So as you know, tonight's meeting is taking place on Zoom. Due to the current pandemic, the City of Ottawa is currently running all public meetings of this nature through virtual channels. That being said, we trust you'll find tonight's meeting just as informational as you would as if it were taking place in person. So before we get going, I'd like to share a few quick notes on our Zoom protocol, participation protocol. So for starters, all participants are automatically placed on mute upon their arrival and for the duration of the presentation. There will be an opportunity for you to speak and ask questions during the Q&A portion of the meeting, and that takes place after the formal presentation. So to ask a question at that time, we ask that you raise your hand electronically by clicking the raise hand function at the bottom. For everyone who has called in from their phone, you press *9. So if you wouldn't mind, we're going to do a quick test run to use that function now. And so I'd ask that you all take a brief moment to locate the button on your screen at this time. So everyone try raising your hand, following the directions on the screen if you don't mind. Great. Awesome, thank you. So we will unmute your microphone when it's your turn to speak. You don't need to click the unmute button. Thanks for your patience. So the next slide, please, Andy. All right, so we highly encourage you to stay involved in this file, both tonight and moving forward. And to do so, for starters, we ask that you sign into tonight's meeting and also fill out the comment sheet if you'd like to share your thoughts in writing. So both of these things can be done virtually using Checkmark. To do so, please click the web links that have been shared in the chat function of this meeting. So at the bottom, you'll see the chat. Feel free to go in there and you should see the links there. So by signing in, you'll be sharing your contact information with the assigned planner, who can then keep you up to date on developments relating to this file. Any comments you submit will also be received by the assigned planner. And without further ado, I'd now like to turn it over to Charmaine Forty, who will be the moderator for this evening's session. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charmaine Forty, and thank you, Jason, for the introduction. I'll be your host and your moderator this evening. Welcome to the public meeting for the draft plan of subdivision for 147 Langstaff Drive. The application has been submitted by I always say this wrong, I apologize. Ernavest Homes. Tonight's meeting will be conducted in English. If your language of choice is French, please advise us. We're happy to provide French as well. Also, tonight's session is being recorded. This is for internal purposes. If the councillor would like to share the recording afterwards, he may do so, but from a city perspective, we will not be sharing it. And also, is there anyone from the media present? If you could please raise your hand if you're from the media. Okay, is there? I'm just going through to look to see if there's anyone from the media. No? Okay, and I'll just ask that throughout just to make sure that if there's anyone from the media, we're happy to have a conversation with you. Also, I'd just like to say, as was mentioned by Jason, we are doing, due to these uncertain circumstances with COVID, all of our meetings are done through Zoom. We have had very successful meetings. And I just want you to know that really they'll provide the opportunity. It's the same as being in person in the way that we'll have our Q&A. You'll have the opportunity to speak. You will have your questions answered. It's just done on, during these challenging times. So at any time that you have a question or that, we'll be taking the questions at the end. If you can't get the raise your hand function to work, no worries. The waving your hand will work just as well. So I'll repeat that after the presentation. I'm just going to go over a little bit with the agenda. Introductions. We're going to have who's in the room with us. We do have some opening remarks from our counselor is present, and he will be providing some opening remarks. Thank you for attending, counselor. We will be talking about the planning process, and we do have Sarah, who's the file lead, who will be talking about that. We're going to do some of the context, the policy overview. We do have the development proposal. They will be speaking to that as well, talk about some next steps, and then we will go into our Q&A, and then there'll be some closing remarks. So I hope that this agenda, it's a full agenda, but I'm hoping it's going to provide everyone the opportunity to get the information that you are looking for, and also the opportunity to ask your question. Next slide, please. So just some introduction of who's in the room. And so if you can, as I call your name, just kind of give us a little wave there so everyone knows who's in the room. As I mentioned, our counselor, Statuary, is with us. There he is right there. Thank you. Myself, Charmaine Forgy, Adam Brown, who is the manager of the Development Review Area. Adam. Thank you. Sarah, who is the file lead. Give a wave there, Sarah. Thank you. I'm certain that some of you have contacted Sarah, and you'll continue to contact her and provide your feedback on this application. Mike is our senior engineer, and will be answering any transportation questions. Mike, if you just want to give a wave there. Thank you. And Jason is in the room with me, socially distancing, to help me with some of the technical pieces as well. And also we have the planning consultants with us tonight to answer your questions. Jack Sterling, please give a wave. There you go. And Peter Hume is with us as well. And then the architect, Malcolm. I'm not sure if Malcolm has entered the room or not. We'll just do a little check there. No, yeah, there he is. Thanks, Malcolm. Thank you. Okay. So now I just want to move along so we can have the opportunity for the presentations. I'm just going to ask the counselor if you could say a few opening remarks. Over to you, counselor.
Myself. Okay. Thank you very much, Charmaine, for the introductory and how tonight's going to work out for us. Just a little bit of brief history in West Carleton official plan 1982 recognized that property to be multi-unit residential. In 2001 was available for sale. So the city at the time put a $1 million earmark for that property, is known as the Honeywell property. So it was public interest in that property to be purchased. The city earmarked $1 million, like what I said, and the community was to fundraise for $500,000. The goal was to have some seniors or older adult community built there, and also agriculture museum in that area. Unfortunately, the fundraising was very slow. We started the fundraising in 2005 or 6, but the price was going faster and going higher than what we can raise the funding. And we only managed to raise altogether at $208,000, and was mostly earmarked, or some of it was actual donation. And I'll talk a little bit about the donation because it's very important to clarify. As the price was going up and we could not catch up with the increase, then some of the funding, almost $400,000 of that $1 million was earmarked, went to a Ducks Unlimited partnership to buy another property, also known the Honeywell Hidden Lake, and to create with the Ducks Unlimited to prevent that land from to be developed. And that's 340-acre land we purchased with some of the money. And some of the money was earmarked. Obviously, we didn't collect because it was earmarked, but the one was collected for donation. The community group who was in charge of the funding, they're offering to give that money back to the resident, and anyone who made a donation and would like to receive their donation back, they need to email btvgcarp@gmail.com. BT basically by the Village Green, BTVG, Carp, all location at gmail.com. And that's the little bit of history, because we get so many emails from the resident saying what happened to by the Village Green, and that's really what happened. So the property in the Carp Community Design Plan, which is we work on in 2003 and was approved by council in 2005 and was amended in 2012, and I'm not sure if we amended one more time in 2015 or we review it in 2015. So basically that property has always been a multi-unit residential designated for that. So now we have an application from a proponent who wished to build on it, and I leave that to our staff, specifically the planner on the file, to explain to us what's happening, and we'll leave it that way. So thank you, Charmaine, and I'll turn it over to you, Charmaine.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for those opening remarks. And now I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, who is the file lead on this application. And Sarah is going to go through the development application process. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Charmaine. So this is the public meeting for the subdivision application for 147 Langstaff Drive. It's a statutory public meeting for a plan of subdivision within the City of Ottawa as required to be held under Section 5120B of the Planning Act. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the City of Ottawa in respect to the proposed plan of subdivision, you must make written requests to myself, Sarah McCormick, at the City of Ottawa Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Department, 110 Laurier Avenue West, Ottawa, Ontario, K1P 1J1. Et puis en français, il s'agit d'une réunion publique prescrite par la loi concernant un plan de lotissement dans la ville d'Ottawa et tenue en vertu à l'alinéa 51-20B de la loi sur l'aménagement du territoire. Pour recevoir un avis de la décision de la ville d'Ottawa concernant le plan de lotissement proposé, veuillez en faire la demande par écrit à Sarah McCormick, moi-même, à la ville d'Ottawa, service de la planification de l'infrastructure et du développement économique, le 110 avenue Laurier Ouest, Ottawa, Ontario, K1P1G1. So if you have any concerns or comments in respect to this proposed plan of subdivision, please send them to me either by mail, they will get to me, or by email. There are also the links in the chat function for the comment sheet. I would note that only public bodies, utilities, or telecommunications companies or railways may appeal a plan of subdivision to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, or LPAT. In respect to the zoning application that has also been submitted with this subdivision application, any person who makes oral comments at the public meeting at a future planning and at a future Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee or written comments to the city before the zoning bylaw is adopted may appeal the decision, may appeal the zoning bylaw to the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal. Next slide, please. So next we will be going over the planning process. If we can just go quickly to the next slide, thank you. So what is a plan of subdivision? A plan of subdivision divides the parcel into lots and blocks of development together with new streets, parks, open space, infrastructure, and walkway blocks. Draft approval would establish the general layout of the subdivision and sets out conditions that the developer must fulfill. Things like detailed landscaping, engineering plans, financial requirements, legal agreements, before that subdivision is actually finalized. And the finalization would be the actual creation and of lots and blocks that are actually transferable. Next slide, please. So what does the city's review actually consist of? The city has received both the plan of subdivision and zoning application with a number of supporting plans and reports. These include, but are not limited to, planning documents such as the planning rationale, concept plans, and the draft plan, engineering plans related to grading, drainage, stormwater, and serviceability, environmental reports considering species at risk, wildlife habitat, natural environment, and tree conservation, as well as transportation relating to traffic volumes, accesses, and road modifications. We're now going to move on to the current status of the subdivision application. Next slide, please. So what has happened so far? The city has received applications for both the subdivision and the associated rezoning, along with their supporting plans and studies. The application, the first submission, was circulated to technical agencies and the public for their comments. Comments based on the technical and public circulation were then provided to the applicant, and a second submission was submitted to the city. That submission was also circulated to technical agencies and to the public for comment. And again, based on those technical and public circulations, more comments were provided to the applicant. And we are now at our public meeting. Next slide, please. This slide just goes over the process in full. We have gone through steps 1 to 6, as mentioned on the previous slide, and we are now on step 7, the statutory public meeting. We will go through the rest of the steps a little bit later in the presentation. I'll now do a quick context and policy overview of the proposal. Next slide, please. This is a location map for the proposed development. It's located at 147 Langstaff Drive on the south side of Langstaff, also located north of the intersection of Carp Road and Donald B. Munro. Next slide, please. The official plan designates this property as village, and the intensity and distribution of land uses within a village is determined in context of any plan for the village contained in Volume 2, which is considered a secondary plan, or a community design plan where such plan has been undertaken, such in this case where we have a community design plan for the village of Carp. That CDP does identify the property as potential fairground expansion, residential multi-unit, and open space. The next slide shows us the different land classifications. So the potential fairground expansion shown in the CDP is listed as dark green. The residential, the arrows are a little bit off, I apologize. So the the light green is the potential fairground expansion. Thank you. The residential multi-unit is the orange. And then the open space is the dark green along the ravine with a little path that goes towards Donald B. Munro. Thank you. Next slide, please. So continuing with the policy overview, what does this mean and what does this permit? The Carp Fairground expansion area, the CDP identifies that this land may be developed in accordance with the provisions of the residential multi-use land use category, where the city and the public was not able to acquire those lands. In the multi-unit residential designation or classification, the uses permitted within this land category include low-rise apartment buildings, seniors accommodations, stacked townhouses, and ground-oriented multi-unit dwellings such as duplexes and townhouses. This classification also identifies that any low-rise apartment buildings shall not exceed 3 stories. The open space classification identifies lands for parks, open space, recreation pathways, drainage control, and conservation use. The CDP identifies that these lands are conceptual in location and intended as long-term guides for the development of an open space system. I will now move on to a brief overview of the development proposal. So what is proposed? Currently, the proposed development includes the following: 65 townhouse dwellings, 4 development blocks proposed to accommodate 128 dwelling units in 4 low-rise apartment buildings. I would note that should the subdivision be approved, all apartment blocks are subject to site plan control. I will go over this a little bit more in some following slides. There is also a 0.65 or 2,670 square meter park proposed, a pathway system along the ravine connecting Langstaff and Donald B. Monroe Drive, pedestrian connections from the subdivision to John Street, and one development block proposed to accommodate a clubhouse and outdoor amenity area. Next, I wanted to do a brief overview of the existing zoning of the property. This property is split zoned. There are two V1, so Village First Residential Density Zones, V1N and V10. These zones permit a mix of uses, including but not limited to detached dwellings, group homes, and home-based businesses. And then there is also a portion of the property that is owned Village Residential Third Density Zone, Subzone B, V3B. This zone permits a mix of residential uses as well, included but not limited to detached dwellings, duplexes, semi-detached homes, and townhouse dwellings. The next slide, I have outlined where those zones are located. So on the north of the property, there is the section zoned V1N in red. And also on the south side of the property next to the medical facility, there is a V10 portion of the property. And in the middle of the property is zoned V3B, which permits the more dense residential units. Moving on to the next slide, a brief overview of proposed zoning. Proposed zoning would include parks and open space, O1. This would accommodate the proposed park and ravine lands. And then for the rest of the property, there would be, we'd be moving to zoning the entire property a residential third density zone as part of this proposal with a rural special exception. This would be to accommodate the proposed residential development. This would add apartment low rise as an additional permitted use where those uses are being proposed, to add the clubhouse as an additional permitted use, and to modify some performance standards related to front yards, corner side yards, and rear yards. Additional information through this process is required in relation to determining what the performance standards are for the proposed apartment buildings. That is it for now for my presentation, and I turn it back over to Charmaine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for that presentation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jack Sterling, who will go us through the development proposal. So Jack, you're on.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. And thank you very much for coming out tonight and listening. This is a very exciting project for us that's been in the works for about a year and a half. And as Sarah's outlined, we've gone through quite a process to date. We still have a long ways to go. And we're certainly interested in hearing comments tonight and getting feedback.
Jack, can you just speak up a bit? I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Okay.
Oh, that's perfect.
Okay, that's better.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So Sarah covered off most of the concepts and most of the principles of what we're doing.
Again, Jack, you're going away from the mic.
We took a long time is that better? Okay, we took a long time looking at the CDP for the community, for the village of Carp, analyzing what was suggested through that process and arrived at the application that we eventually filed. So we just have a quick couple of slides. I'm working in concert with Peter Hume of HP Urban, and we're assisting the landowner through the development process. So as was indicated earlier, this is the parcel. I think everybody probably by now is familiar with it. It's an 18-acre parcel, quite a significant large parcel in the village of Carp. Next slide, please. As Sarah indicated, the plan that we proposed is consistent with the Carp Community Design Plan, which allows for residential multi-use, multi-unit units. And we are designing it and trying to focus the development on a seniors community. Next slide. So the concept plan that we prepared, this is a slightly different version of ones you might have seen, but it's prepared by our architectural group, and it lays out how we see the public streets, the townhomes, the apartments, etc. As Sarah's indicated, we've gone through 2 reviews with the city and responded to a number of comments. We're in the 3rd review right now, and our team is working diligently on responding to the comments from the city as well. Next slide. So as has been touched on, the site has access from a number of collector and arterial roads. We saw some of the comments earlier relating to transportation, but with Langstaff, Donald B. Monroe, and Carp Road, we're satisfied that through the transportation analysis we've done that we have suitable access to this site that will integrate into the village of Carp and will work extremely well as the area develops. And that's just another view of the concept from a slightly different angle. And I think that's it. Yeah. So as I said, we've been working on the project for about 1.5 years. We were pleased to finally be able to submit with all the required studies that the city had us do. We're on our 2nd review of those studies, our 3rd response to those studies and the city comments. And we're looking forward to tonight and receiving comments and moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. So next, we're nearly to the Q&A section. I'm just going to pass it over to Sarah, and she's going to walk us through what the next steps are now that the application has been submitted and next steps after our meeting this evening. Sarah?
Thanks, Charmaine. So I've split this up into 2 different sections. What's next for the subdivision, plan of subdivision application, and the next steps for the zoning application. So right now, as we have provided a 2nd set of comments to the developer and the proponent, they would be working on a subsequent submission. And so we're now in our issue resolution phase. This can happen through multiple resubmissions to the city. Any resubmission that is received will be uploaded onto the city's DevApps website and will be accessible by the public. If issues are resolved to the satisfaction of the city, conditions of draft approval are finalized, and a staff report is prepared for approval by the manager, subject to delegated authority. If delegated authority is removed by the councillor, staff will prepare a report to the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee. A notice of decision would then be sent out to all who commented on the file. The next slide goes over what happens next for the rezoning application. Rezoning would only move forward if the plan of subdivision has received draft approval. Staff would then prepare a report with recommendations to the Rural and the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee, with a notice of public meeting being sent to all who provided comment. The way I've made my list of those who have commented, I have one sheet for both the subdivision and the zoning. So if you've provided comment to me for the subdivision or the rezoning application, you are covered for both applications. The Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee is the meeting at the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee is the statutory public meeting under the Planning Act where the public can attend and participate. The Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee would then proceed to make a recommendation to Council for their consideration and decision. Next slide, please. If approved by the City Council, would then enact the zoning bylaw. A notice of bylaw passing would be then sent to all those who commented through the process. Appeals, as mentioned earlier, only public bodies, utilities, or telecommunication companies or railways may appeal a plan of subdivision to the local planning appeal tribunal. In relation to the zoning, any person who makes oral comments at the public meeting at the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee, or who has provided written comments to the city before the zoning bylaw is adopted, may appeal the zoning bylaw to the local planning appeal tribunal.
Thank you, Sarah. And so just before we get into it, next slide, please. No, this slide, please. How do you provide input and participate? So again, I'm going to ask that you, Andy, can you put in the chat how you can sign in and provide comments at the public meeting, which we're doing this evening. Also, you can review the application on DevApps, and that is ottawa.ca/DevApps. provide comments to Sarah. Sarah will take comments. There's her email address. She's happy to take comments via email. And also, as was mentioned, attend and make a presentation at the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee meeting. So there's ample time, and I'll remind you at the end, ample time to provide your comments and your feedback. And of course, this evening, we're here to listen to your feedback as well. And so just Sarah, just the next slide, please, of what comments you've received to date.
Thanks, Charmaine. So through the consultation period, I have received many comments, and I am aware of some recurring themes that have been coming up regarding this proposal. So first, that is that there's too much density being proposed, and it's not in keeping with the rural village nature of Carp. The city, I apologize. So as we had mentioned through the presentation, staff is reviewing the application to determine whether the proposed subdivision is meeting the intent of both the official plan and the community design plan, which has identified this property for residential multi-use development. The second is there are concerns with the development proposal being a rental community, and that freehold or a mix of freehold and rental units would be more appropriate. Here, the city can't dictate whether a proposal is rental versus freehold, and that decision to either rent or sell freehold is up to the developer and their business plan. So we've heard it, as I just mentioned, in this presentation, staff are currently reviewing the proposal for conformity to the official plan and the community design plan. Another topic of concerns that we've received from the public is regard to traffic, and that too much traffic would be generated by the development. And there are concerns regarding the proximity to the school and the medical center, which are providing lots of traffic concerns. The city transportation staff have been reviewing the transportation impacts assessment that was submitted by the development team to review any impacts the proposed development will have, and if any mitigation measures are required as a result of the proposed development. Finally, a large number of people have been commenting regarding insufficient parking proposed as part of the subdivision. So through the city's review, staff are looking at the subdivision in relation to the zoning bylaw and parking requirements that are found in Part 4 of the bylaw. In relation specifically to apartment buildings, the developer is looking or is proposing both surface and underground parking as part of the proposal. So right now, all that's being seen is the surface parking that has been shown on the concept plan. I would note again that site plan control would be required if the subdivision is approved for any apartment block. And through that site plan control process, which is also a public process, the site plan will need to demonstrate that the apartment buildings meet all zoning standards and requirements, including the required parking.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, for that. Thank you for just giving an overview and the responses to what you've heard so far. We are going to go to the moderated question and answer period. Just before we go through that, just a reminder of how we're going to handle it. If you can use the raise hand function to ask your question, please do that. If you can't, if you're having difficulty, give me a wave and we'll put you, we'll make sure that you get to answer your question. If you're on the telephone, *9 will raise your hand for you. So just so if everyone, we'll just do it that way. How we're going to do it is that you will be unmuted when it's time for your question. I will ask you your question, and if you know who you would like to answer your question, please advise me. Then I will get your question answered, go back to you to see if the question was answered. Sometimes I will say that you might not be pleased with the answer, but if they did answer your question, then I apologize, but I will be asking, was that an answer? It might not be the one that you were hoping for, but I will circle back. And so we will go through everyone, who has a question. We do have, it's 7:07, and I think this is we have until 8:30. So we'll see how we go with that. But please, and if someone's already asked your question, feel free to lower your hand as well. Okay, so I hope that it works for everyone. I have my first question is with, and I apologize, I don't think this is your name, HCA. You're unmuted. You're,
Yeah, it's Alan Joyner.
okay, thank you, Alan.
The description of the plan being compliant with the village design plan and the fact that Jack Sterling had reviewed the village design plan to arrive at the proposal that is in front of us today. I'm wondering what community consultation was done to help them interpret the village design plan, because it appears that there's a number of areas where the intent of sections of it aren't necessarily reflected in the development. So I really like some detail about the depth of the public consultation that went on in preparing this draft plan.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Jack?
Thank you. We did not undertake any public consultation through that review. We reviewed it with our team of consultants and looked at the policies, et cetera. We had a pre-consult with the City of Ottawa staff as prior to submitting the application and got feedback from city staff through the pre-consultation process.
Thank you, Jack. Alan? Okay.
I guess the only, Eli, were you involved at all in the consultation before? Sorry, I can ask early. Was the councillor involved at all in that consultation?
No, I will ask Councillor.
Yeah, when Mr. Sterling met with staff, he mentioned to me, and that's part of the plan and rationale, to meet with the councillor and let him know there's an application coming to that site. So that's my involvement, but the meeting was between staff and Mr. Sterling group, was not with I met with Mr. Sterling. I was notified his intent, but I was not in the meeting with staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Alan. Next question, Jeff. Sorry, Jeff, I'm finding you on the screen.
Hi, it's Jeff and Kathleen Stanier. I have a number of questions. My first question is, the townhomes are oriented that they back onto Langstaff Drive. So there's no real effort to integrate the existing into the existing residential community. For this reason, and traffic-wise, I wonder why can't you access in and out of John Street, which runs in between the chiropractic center and what's it called? The Juke Joint Cafe, and maybe have the developer pay for a traffic circle. The traffic concerns with this are huge. I worked in schools for years, and the drop off and pickup zone, regardless of this being a supposedly senior community, it's 55 plus. So 55 aged people, we can assume, are still working. So those are my questions. There's been like really no effort to orient it into the existing residential community. So why are we insisting on using Langstaff?
Thank you. Mike, do you want to answer that question from a city perspective? And then I'll put it over to Jack.
Langstaff is a collector road, and collector roads have two purposes. One is to move traffic and one is to grant access. So I see no problem with having some access or some new roads on Langstaff. We don't see the need for a roundabout. That's an expensive undertaking, and this site, which is, I'm sorry?
Mike, you're cutting in and out. Maybe you want to start again.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so yes, if the question is why are we using Langstaff, Langstaff as a collector road can accommodate accesses or new intersections.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, I see Jeff. I don't, Jeff, and you're not on the screen. I think your camera's turned off. Did that answer your question?
It did a little bit, except if you see drop off and pick up at the school, it isn't realistic. My last question would be to the architect. we're saying it's a 55 plus community, but we're not guaranteeing it. So I want to know how many bedrooms are in the townhomes.
Okay, over to you, Jack.
Thank you very much. Just going back to your initial comment, across the street from us on Langstaff, there are 3 houses that front onto Langstaff. We will be integrating the development into the balance of the community in Langstaff through pedestrian connections, through the green spaces and the ravines. We are making a pedestrian connection on the John Street road allowance to the village of Carp core. Bringing another road in that area would be unsafe given the geometrics of that intersection, and a traffic circle would require significant property acquisition, even if it made any sense at all, which it doesn't. With respect to the design of the units, we're still working with the architectural team on designing them. They are intended to be bungalow and bungalow with loft townhomes. The bedrooms will vary from 2 to possibly 2 plus a den, but the floor plates haven't been finalized yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jack. And over to the councillor. I see a councillor.
Thank you, Charmaine, and thank you for seeing my hand waving. Now, when we talk about John Street, I just want to echo the village of Carp has been selected to be the walkable community, the 15-minute walkable community. We are working with the Hunter Community Association, and we don't want to see a street inside John Street. We want to see a walkable, so the resident in that area can walk to the main street of the village of Carp and support the local businesses we have in that area.
Thank you, councillor. I see you, Brian, but Judy's next. Judy? Okay, Judy, we'll unmute you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Judy.
Sorry. Yes, I have a couple of requests for maps in Jack Sterling's presentation and your zoning presentation. I would find it very helpful to have the map of the zoning, if that could be available on your development application site as a single item so we can find it easily. And also Jack Sterling presented a new concept plan that I don't think any of us have seen yet. That would be very helpful to get copies of those 2 documents.
Okay. Yes, yes, Jack?
No problem at all. The concept plan I showed tonight is actually similar to, exact same as the one that you've seen on the application website. It's just a different rendering from different vantage points, but it displays the same unit relationship, road connections, et cetera, but we've provided that to the city for tonight, and certainly we can post it on their website. No problem at all.
Thank you, Jack. Judy? Did you have another? Yep, Sarah, I see you, but
yes.
Judy?
Okay, I have a couple of process questions.
Okay.
I wonder if you could walk us through the process that would occur for the site plan approval for the apartment buildings. And if you could also explain how that is affected one way or the other by the delegated authority.
Okay, thank you. And I'll pass that over to Sarah. So that's 2 questions. One is about if you want to speak about the maps, the availability of the maps for Judy, and also the site plan approval and the delegated authority. Sarah?
Thanks, Charmaine. Yes, so the zoning map, I can try to make that available. That is also available online on our Geo Ottawa website. It is a mapping system. You can look up 147 Langstaff, and there is a drop-down box where you can click zoning information, and it will provide that information to you. I will look into, I've written that down to see if we can add an existing zoning map to DevApps at the same time. In terms of process for site plan applications, the city would receive an application from the developers for site plan. There would be a sign placed on the property, and there would be a public circulation similar to the plan of subdivision where members of the public are sent a hard copy of the plan. Again, there would be a 30-day circulation, both technical and for the public, where we gather comments. And then it's similar to what we're doing with the subdivision. We would provide comments back to the developer, and they would provide, or we'd go through the issue resolution process, where we would go through multiple submissions, having the developer address the comments that have been provided. There is then, once the file has progressed to a satisfactory point, staff would, through the manager of the department and delegated authority, approve, let's say, the application, and a notice of decision would be sent out to all of those who have commented on the file. Similarly to the plan of subdivision, delegated authority could be removed by the councillor, and then a report would be prepared to the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee for consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Judy, did that answer your question? Yeah, okay.
Just to clarify, the delegated authority is in place now for the plan of subdivision. Is that correct? And I just wonder if there's any potential for that being removed by the councillor for the subdivision plan.
I can confirm that delegated authority is still in place at this time, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Barbara is a question. Barbara?
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for this opportunity to comment on the development. I just wonder, I was looking at the application and I haven't seen any sort of data regarding the parking. And I think that, you know, it's easy to say it's a problem and it's easy to say it's not a problem without any data. I do live on Langstaff, and I know that between people coming in and out of the parking lot at the medical center and people pick up and drop off at the school and that sort of thing. I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, is it part of the plan that you actually, you know, have people sitting there and clicking the number of cars coming up and down? Because, you know, I think it would clarify things quite a bit if we could have some of that kind of data, so that you know, everybody can understand clearly what's going on and whether or not there need to be any you know, adjustments.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Mike, do you want to take that question, please? Okay.
Thanks. Yes, through the transportation impact assessment or the traffic study, we use volume counts. Typically, the consultant will send somebody out to actually, as you say, sit there, click, or set up some sort of camera system. That's typically when the city does not have any recent counts. So that's usually what happens. I don't think the consultant did any kind of traffic counts at this time, obviously. Traffic volumes are significantly lower than they were last year. But yes, that is the typical process. They use volumes, they use hard data, and through that they have site generated volumes that are attributed to the new proposal, and we combine those, and then we decide if we need mitigation.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, Barbara, did that answer your question?
I guess the question I would still have then is, you know, I mean, a comment is that I don't know why this wasn't done earlier. Maybe we're not at the right stage, but you know, does the public have access to see that kind of information when it's done? And then I do have one more quick question, but I just wonder whether we get to see that information or not.
Okay, Mike, is that information public information? Is that in our open data?
Yes, it is. And also the traffic study is public.
Yeah.
On DevApps.
So they could find the traffic study at DevApps, and then the data.
Any volumes in open data for any intersection in the city.
So can, without putting anyone on the spot here, but can I suggest, Barbara, that you reach out to Sarah and put that in an email, and she'll provide you the opportunity to get that data, if that would be helpful. Okay, I'll take that as yes, they will do that. So there we go. Thank you. Brian, thank you for being patient. I did see you waving your hand. So Brian, over to you. Okay, unmute. There, Brian's right there. Can we unmute Brian, please? There, you're asked to unmute. Can you press the button there? See it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. I'm sitting here with my wife, Darlene. We're homeowners on a cross street to the subject development site on Kavanaugh Drive. And one of my questions was going to be regarding traffic. And Mike, I think you're the kind of the lead on this here. So you mentioned traffic studies. And I noticed in some of the documents that Sarah told me about were a study done by McIntosh Perry, which is the actual traffic study that I think Barbara was referring to. Looking at the date of when the study was done, I'm wondering just how appropriate is that information? Because it was conducted in August of 2019, when school is not in and when the medical center is on vacation during that month. So is that a real appropriate reflection of the traffic that is going up and down Langstaff, actually in the whole community?
Okay, thank you, Brian. Mike, is the timing of the study, does that come into play? Sorry, Brian, I was just recapping what you were saying.
Well, any study within 5 years is valid. That's according to our own council-approved transportation impact guidelines. Now, if they had done their study outside of the school year, it's possible it might be underrepresenting the existing traffic volumes on Langstaff. But that's, I mean, it probably won't make too much of a difference. Schools have a very tight window in terms of traffic generation, but I'm happy to take another look at that, and just to make sure that the volumes are representative.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
We're still in review.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
So yeah, I would suggest any weekday, any school day, feel free to come on down and fight the traffic in front of the school and the medical center.
Every school.
I had a question. Thank you, Michael, for the information. I had a question about, and I'm not sure where to direct this, so maybe you can help with this, Charmaine. I understand that the rezoning is looking at changing the rezoning to allow multi-unit apartment buildings. And I understand that there is a story limitation of 3 stories. My question would be, is there any horizontal limitation in size? Because for this one building, it's going to be 60 apartment buildings. There's going to be, or 60 apartments in the building. That would mean 20 apartments per floor. So is there any kind of a guideline on the horizontal size of an apartment building in the zoning allotment?
Thank you, Brian. I'll put that over to Sarah. Sarah?
Thank you. So we have not fully completed the zoning portion of this, simply because the plan of subdivision is still in flux. We're still responding to comments. So we finalize or look at what appropriate zoning would be a little bit later in the process. However, I can let you know that typically when we're looking at larger development on a lot, we don't necessarily look at floor plans and horizontal distances, but we do look at different lot coverages. So we wouldn't want to see the whole lot covered by a building. So that will form part of staff's review for the zoning application, is what would an appropriate lot coverage look like for those apartment blocks. And similarly, through the site plan application, we would then get into more details with the location of the apartment building, location of required parking, and amenity spaces and things like that that are associated to the development of an apartment building.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think Jack had a comment. Jack?
Certainly, and thank you very much for the question. In addition to what Sarah just indicated, if and when an application is filed for the apartment building that you refer to, it will be through the building code. And through the building code, there are standards with respect to fire, access, egress, et cetera, which dictate certain things with respect to the design of the building as well, have to be taken into account.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Okay, last question for you, Brian. Okay. Go ahead.
Regarding the, and I guess this is for the developer, it has to do with the fact that stated that the development is going to be marketed as being attractive to seniors. And I'm just wondering, how can you actually do that? Because there should be no discrimination on who could rent. I think that was tried in other communities without a lot of success. So what studies have been done that there's actually a demand for 55 plus rentals in our community?
Okay, thank you, Brian. And so I'll, Jack, would you like to answer that, please?
Thank you very much. You're correct. Under provincial legislation, you can't dictate whether a community is for adult only, et cetera. So historically, through communities like Amberwood Village, et cetera, which was originally designed as a seniors area, you design the community in a manner that attracts that level of that type of renter or purchaser, and you design facilities that promote that. For example, in the community building that we're proposing, there will be a swimming pool, pickleball courts, things like that. We still have to work with the City of Ottawa on the facilities that will be in the dedicated park. But our initial look at them would be to orient them more towards a 55 plus rental target. So there are a number of ways to do it. And certainly the owner and ourselves are very involved in the development industry and in the market in the Ottawa area. There's an extremely strong high demand for these types of units in this growing age bracket. Both you and I probably qualify for that, and so there's a huge demand. You look at the Lapine developments in the Canada Town Centre that are oriented for this group. It's a growing segment of the housing market. It hasn't been addressed for years, and it's starting to be addressed as the population pyramid shifts into this age group.
Good. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Brian, for your questions. And now next question will go to Dan Wallace, please. Dan?
Hi there. Thanks for taking this this consultation. It's appreciated, and I have a couple questions. My first question is about some of the existing infrastructure in Carp and how this development might be served by that infrastructure. Notably, the internet infrastructure of the village, the fire and the police infrastructure of the village. It came to my attention that Carp no longer has an ambulance in our fire station because the new ambulances don't fit in the building. With an aging population, I think they would also want to have some access to medical services. And my understanding is that the medical center is more or less at capacity and not taking on any new patients. So I'm wondering if any studies have been conducted, or if any thought has gone towards the infrastructure that would be required. You mentioned the demands of a 55 plus community. Have you considered any of the health services, police and fire services that would be required for that group?
Thank you, Dan. Sarah, can you discuss about your circulation process? Sarah?
Yes, I can start. I also think the counselor had his hand up for this
Okay,
question.
I'm sorry,
as well.
Counselor.
Yes, through our technical circulation, we do circulate many different departments within the city and wait for comments back. We have not received any comments in that regard. You had mentioned internet and that type of utility. Typically, there would be, if a subdivision is approved, there is a detailed design that does happen. And we look at different utilities and circulate and provide, the developer would have to look at whether or not different easements or whatnot are required for different services like that. That's what I can offer at this time, but maybe the counselor has some additional comments.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Counselor?
Thank you, Charmaine, and thank you for the question, but I'd like to clarify when the question came about the ambulance. The ambulance is in our building. My building right now is Kinburn and Carp Road, and we have a ambulance station, and the reason we choose that is because central to all of West Carleton. Also, the fire chief has moved his office from the village of Carp to Kinburn, to my office where he originally was. So the ambulance is in the building. Obviously, they don't stay at the building if they get calls, and lately it's been quite a bit of calls, but they're still stationed in the municipal building here at the corner. As far as high-speed internet, we do have a high-speed internet now. Could be better, of course. We have companies now looking for fiber optic, and Bell Canada also proposing fiber optic to the village. So it'd be a matter of time for fiber optic. But as far as fire, we have a great fire service. Actually, is a award-winning Carp fire service in our village. So just want to clarify, because it's not fair for the fire or the paramedic not to be speaking here.
Thank you so much, Counselor. Jack, you had a statement, and then I'll go back to you, Dan.
Certainly, just one aspect for you, Dan. As Sarah's indicated, the city of Ottawa has an official plan. Supporting that is a number of master plan studies, which relate both to transportation, parks and rec, etc. But they also relate to fire, paramedics, police. And the city of Ottawa every 5 years implements a development charge bylaw that collects money at the time of building permit issuance from every new home or commercial space built in the city of Ottawa. And built into the development charge bylaw are funds which are dedicated to fire, paramedics, and emergency services as allocated under these master plans. So through this development of approximately 193 units, there will be development charges paid to the city of Ottawa, which will contribute to these services as well.
Thank you, Jack. Over to you, Dan.
I'll keep it brief, just a very quick follow-up. And I guess this question is for the owner and the developer. What is the estimated population of this development, and what percentage of the core village population do we expect that this development will make up?
Okay, thank you. Jack, can you answer that? What do you think, how many folks do you think will be living in this development? And do we know what that estimate would be compared to who's living there right now? If I paraphrase what Dan had to say. Okay, Jack?
Thanks. So with 193 units, you get a variation of occupants in apartments. I think, Sarah, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, the number usually runs, the city uses about 1.8 to 1.9 persons per unit. For townhouses, I think it runs about 2.1, 2.2. So if you're doing just straightforward, simple math, This probably add plus or minus 400 residents to the village of Carp. In the Carp CDP, there were projections on the village growth, and this unit count was accommodated in that projection through the CDP process.
Okay, thank you, Jack. And Sarah, did you want to confirm that you're good with what you want to confirm? Okay, thank you. Okay, Dan, that answered your questions? Okay.
Just the second part of my question, which was what percentage of the core village population will be living in the, based on that estimate that you provided, what percentage of the core village population would be in this development?
Do we have that information, or is that something we'd have to get back to Dan on? I think that's something that someone would have to get, Sarah?
We would have to get back to him on that.
Okay.
If you could provide an email to me, Dan, and I'll find that information for you.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Okay, and I do see Sunny and Cher hand up. I will get to you. Just the next is Jeremy. Jeremy?
Oh, Jerome? I'm assuming
I'm
this is me.
sorry. I
No worries.
apologize, Jerome.
No, this is fine. So kind of two questions. One comment, do we not know how many people live in the village of Carp at the moment? That becomes on simple math. If we follow the same assumption that was done earlier in this call, we're going to take 2.1, 2.5 times the amount of dwelling. That would be a simple answer.
So I will, the counselor, I'm certain he knows. Unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head. Counselor?
Okay. In the village of Carp, we have 720 dwelling right now. And with that, the population is close to 2,000 based on 2016 census. So if you want to do the calculation, it's fine by me, but I mean, that's the number we have right now on record.
Thank you for your clarification. I appreciate that. So that was just kind of follow up that simple math. So we're talking about 20 or 25%. So it's not a drop in the bucket. And that's exactly to my question. Where I'm going with this is probably targeted more to Sarah first. Can you speak a little bit as to the community fit of the project, and especially talking to what Jack said earlier in the beginning, where there was no public consultation done with the community prior to both the Carp, the vision of the development of the village, or the vision of the development of the village of Carp, and not just the letter of the plan, but also in the spirit, where no consultation was done, and how adding that level of people to the village, the strain on infrastructure, which was also brought the strain on resources and others, and maybe talk as to what are your views as to how this plan is compatible.
Thank you. Sarah, so the question is, and I'll just paraphrase, that the community fit of the proposal in front of us, and also the strain on the existing infrastructure. How was the community, how was that taken into account?
Thanks, Charmaine. I'm just writing down the portions of your question so I can touch on the points. 1 second, please.
Okay. And no worries, I will ensure that you answer each point as well. I've written.
Thanks, Charmaine. So in terms of your first question on how this fits with the community, and this also ties into the view of how the plan is compatible. At this point, the city is reviewing the application, and all I can tell you at this point is that we are reviewing it in terms of the entire CDP and the entire official plan to ensure it does fit and provide comments back to the applicant. It's up to the applicant to provide a rationale on why this development or how this development does fit into the community and addresses all the points in the CDP. In terms of the infrastructure, again, through the pre-consultation, the city staff, in terms of transportation, environmental, engineering, planning, have identified a number of plans and studies that were required for submission, which are available online, and staff are reviewing those to ensure that there is appropriate infrastructure in place and proposed through the development to support what is being proposed.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think, Jack, you have a comment as well? Okay, Jack, you have to unmute.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
I appreciate the question, Jerome, and certainly we look forward to working with the community on this proposal. Tonight is certainly the first opportunity we've had to reach out to the community in general, but we will continue to work with it. But one of the things I think you have to take into account right from the get-go is in the community design plan for Carp, which was developed by the city and the community. It didn't have any input from landowners or developers, or it might have, but it was developed in a very public process. It states that for this property, we should be providing opportunities for seniors accommodation to meet the needs of the aging population. It was identified as a priority during the consultation process. That's right in the text of the community design plan. We didn't write it, we read it. And in reading it, we took it into account as we processed and developed our application.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Okay, Jerome, did that answer, was that an answer to your question?
Partly. I would also encourage, as we, the developers and Sarah and various stakeholders here, to focus on areas where there's many pieces of policy that are in there, and it seems like most, if not all, of the corners that are part of this project are requiring zoning amendment, are requiring or not meeting basic threshold for park space, are looking at advantageous moment in time to calculate the traffic implications. There's a lot of the corners of the square peg that are being pushed into a round hole, and each and every one of those corners are at the absolute edge of what, and the concept of a rural village, there's an element of this that seems to be community fit, and I would strongly encourage further consultation, and for Sarah and Eli to consider the community fit as a strong aspect of the development. Where development is inevitable, I think we all want to welcome folks to our community here, and so long as we don't just only focus on the letter of the law, we make that fit, and we go deep down into a little bit of the spirit of the intentions as to what the plan was, and not just try to game the system.
Okay, thank you, Jerome. I appreciate that, and that will be noted. I think that's Jack and Sarah have taken that feedback, so thank you so much. And I know the councillors listening as well as other city staff. Thank you for that. The next question will go to Sunny and Cher. And there you go. Unmute yourself. Just get yourself. There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, hello everybody, and my name is Sean Kerwin. This is my wife Rita Kerwin.
Oh, so you're just trying to trick me with Sonia and Cher.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know who Mike is. Who is Mike in relation to this?
Mike, who's speaking about transportation.
Yeah.
He's a transportation engineer that's working for the City of Ottawa in planning services.
Okay, so I don't know if Mike realizes that there's a school and a medical center across from each other. You realize that, Mike? Okay, so you've been to that area to see it firsthand then, I presume. What?
Maybe us, we'll have to get, do you have another question for Mike, and I'll go to Mike. And so
no. So my other concern is the water. I don't know if anybody's done any inspection of the well system that's in Carp, and how a community as far as this would go with that well system. In previous years, they've had problems with it already. So to slap another 400 or 500 people in there, it's going to be tough. Maybe Eli knows more about that. I don't know.
Okay. I think the councillor would like to answer your question. Councillor, about the water and the well system. Over to you, councillor.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the question. Mike, you're right. A few years ago, we had a problem. I think in 2012, we had a fire, and the pump house got really flooded. And anyway, since then, we had worked with the provincial government, the federal, and the city, and we have made $3.2 million investment in upgrading the water system in the village of Carp. And as you I'm not sure if Sarah has more information, but as we speak today, we're still we haven't finished yet, but we are in process. As far as the quantity of the water, we have a plenty. As you know, we even submit water to the Carp Airport development because the water quantity is quite a bit. Actually, the wall hasn't even changed. They're telling us in the last at least 8 years has no change whatsoever to the quantity of but the quality is getting much better. And I have to tell you, the investment we did with the stimulus between the Fed, the provincial, is working well for us. As you know, Mike, I live in the village, and I can tell you I live on the hill, and we have quite a bit of water pressure in our area. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'm just going to ask Sarah to build on the Councillor's response. Sarah?
Thank you. So there was a hydrogeological soil water study completed as part of the application, which is available online. So the city is aware of this, and our engineers are reviewing that report. It needs to be demonstrated that there's sufficient water quality, water quantity that's available to support the proposed development without impacting anybody else's water. And through a thorough engineering review for things like water, wastewater, stormwater will be part of a detailed review process.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And I'm just going to go to Mike. Well, Mike, a question came in for you. Are you aware that there's a school close by? And also, are you aware, have you actually visited the site?
No, I have not visited the site. The consultant sent out some of their staff to do a traffic count in April of 2019. I just checked that right now as we were speaking when the last resident brought it up, which I believe is during the school year. So that traffic is accounted for in the Langstaff count. The thing to remember about schools or medical offices is they are all traffic generators, and we count them. We count traffic. It doesn't really matter what the use is. Background traffic on a road is background traffic. They're numbers. It's data, and that's the data we have from April 2019.
Okay,
which I think is more than valid.
So what I'm hearing, Mike, is that you're aware that there's a school there, and perhaps you didn't visit the site, but the consultants, traffic folks would have visited the site and did the counting. Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, did that back to John? Yes.
If you look at Brian Wallace's screen there, he's holding up August 2019 was the traffic. See August?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so there's no school in August.
So there seems to be discrepancy whether or not it was April or August.
See that, Mike?
So I will ask, I can see the sign there. Thank you for holding that up. I will ask Mike to double check that, and we'll go on with the questions. And then if Mike can double check that while we take other questions. I'm mindful I have a whole queue of about 12 questions, and I'm only have 40 minutes left. So we'll get Mike to check that and get back to us. Okay, thank you. Michelle, been very patient. Michelle, over to you. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to ask, since there wasn't any public consultation on this design, was any person involved in this development, whether it be from anyone in the Sterling Group, the architect, anyone within the city of Ottawa, other than the data collectors? Has anybody been in the village, basically boots on the ground, in Carp, on Langstaff, during a weekday, just to see the flow and ebb and the feel of our village? Or is this just being mainly looked at via maps or aerial footage? Because from a map perspective, this looks like a gold mine, and I can understand exactly why things are moving forward. But if you're actually standing in our village to get a feel of our community and the flow of everybody, foot traffic, car traffic, you know, has anybody been with their boots on the ground that is involved in this project?
Thank you so much for your question, Michelle. I'm going to put that over to Jack. And so I think that to paraphrase the question, has anyone for the development application, have they visited the village to see the look and feel and how the flow of the village goes? Over to you, Jack.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate the question. The entire team of consultants that we engaged on the project all live in the city of Ottawa. I am actually a resident of the councillor's ward. I attend the Carp Fair. I attend the Carp Market. I go to the Carp Bingo. I've walked this site probably 40 times. My dogs are patients at the Carp veterinarian clinic. The owner of the land lives in Stittsville, and his family and his wife's family have been historically involved in the Ottawa area and the West End, specifically in Stittsville, Amberwood, Canada, Carp for decades. So we are very, very familiar with the community. We're in it constantly. The architectural group that we hired to assist us on this, we specifically chose because they designed Alice's Cafe. They've done other work within the village of Carp, and we feel they have a very strong finger on the pulse of the village of Carp. So between the consulting group, myself, the owners, the architects, this is not a foreign village to us. There have been plenty of our boots all over the community.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. Okay, thank you, Michelle. Next question, it will go to Allison Green. Allison?
Charmaine, it looks like Allison's audio isn't working, so I can't unmute her.
Okay, so Allison, can you perhaps maybe, Andy, can you walk her through the technology, please?
Yeah, Allison, you're going to have to reconnect to the meeting, actually. It looks like it didn't connect your audio when you connected. So my suggestion is to close your Zoom down and then reconnect to the meeting. And as soon as I see you in the meeting, I'll let you back in and put you on the list. She's already left, actually.
Okay, good. Thank you, Randy. Next question is to Stonebridge.
Hey there.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
Hi there. We're living on the edge of the proposed development near the medical center, and we were just wondering what considerations are being made for the Blanding's turtle, the endangered species that was found on the property, and what considerations are being made for it, seeing as it travels around like a few hundred meters to get to its nesting zone, and the only body of water within 100 meters or 200 meters is that river that goes right through the development. So it's pretty obvious where it's migrating. So I'm wondering what's being done in regards to that.
Good. Thank you so much. Jack, what's taking into account with the Blanding, the turtles? Jack?
Thank you very much. Excellent question. We, as directed by the city and the province, conducted an environmental impact study of the property and analyzed all the species at risk, et cetera, in the area, including Blanding's turtles. Interestingly enough, there was no Blanding's turtles habitat identified in any of the studies until the arrival of this single turtle, miraculously a week or two ago or a month ago. With being informed by the city of the arrival of this hatchling, we submitted the necessary paperwork to the ministry, and we are following through the process on it.
Good, thank you, Jack. Does that answer your question?
The process is, I was actually the one that found it. it's I can assure you it was not like planted, but this kind of like this by the sounds of what you were saying there, miraculously found. It was 100% found there, and it just I was curious also about there was the you said that there was the you had done the environmental assessment before the Blandings turtle. Just wanted to make sure that there would be like a new update for that afterwards, in terms of searching for nests and stuff like that.
Okay, good, thank you.
As part of the initial study, the entire property was studied and looked for nests, along with background data provided by the province on their knowledge of Blandings turtle habitat in the area. And as I said, we didn't find any in the year that we were on site with our environmental people, nor did the province identify any Blandings turtle habitat in the area. So I don't want to misconstrue how you've interpreted my comments. I'm not suggesting the hatchling was planted. It's just, it's very unusual that it appeared when it did, considering we haven't been able to find any habitat. But with its being identified, we have started the process through the province for how to deal with it and how to direct it. It is not unusual for Blandings turtles to be in several areas of the community, in the Canada area, along the Carp, in Arcadia and everything. There's significant work that's done with respect to Blandings turtles. There are solutions to it. We are more than satisfied that the way we have designed the development, the way we have created setbacks, etc., that we can accommodate any issues should any Blandings habitat been found.
Thank you, John. And is that environmental study, is that a public document that is shared and can be shared?
It's on DevApps.
Okay. So I think that would be something that might be helpful for folks to know, and they could go view that. Thank you, John. Okay, the next question is to Murray. Thank you for your patience.
Thanks, Charmaine. I think I got unmuted.
Yep, you are. I can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, and well, thanks for the opportunity. And then, of course, there's all the friends of the community that have managed to go through half my questions. So many thanks to 2 or 3 of them that have poked at some of those. I just, maybe this is for Jack. I just kind of want to revisit sort of, I guess, when Sarah described the zoning map and there were 2V1 parcels within the land development. I'm just wondering if the city upholds that zoning. Does Jack have a plan B basically to accommodate that?
Okay, thank you. So Jack, so say the zoning is not changed. Do you have an alternative in mind, Jack?
Thank you for the question. So the zoning that currently exists on the site is historic in nature, and I'm not sure what it goes back to in terms of how those 2 areas were delineated or on what basis they were. They don't really reflect some of the text of the Carp CDP. So it's not unusual in processes like this that a rezoning application is filed that modifies the current zoning on a site. We feel through our planning rationale, through the policies of the CDP, through the layout of the concept that we have, that the zoning application will adequately and correctly reflect the intent of the CDP and is an application for rezoning that should be embraced and supported by the city and the community. So short answer to your question is we are satisfied with the work that we've done, the basis, the decisions we've made, that we don't have a plan B.
Thank you, John. Murray, does that answer your question?
Well, probably not, but I just maybe would argue a bit that, you know, having just recently read the CDP, looked at how that map in 2012 allocated sort of, I think it permitted and encouraged the multi-use that was near the medical center. But then when we reflect on the fairground expansion portion, it was really considered more of open space. And I don't understand the process of how that large section or plot of land suddenly became V3 rated. But what I do respect is that Sarah showed us the map that has 2 V1 parcels, which obviously the city went through a process that appropriately allocated those zones. And so I come back to Jack to say that, you know, I think that that's part of the respect to this process is should the city uphold those current zoning, that it will be reflected in a redesign of the proposal. And if I could, after Charmaine, just one more added question.
Okay, thank you, Murray. Jack, do you have a comment to that?
Certainly. I think actually what I would suggest is the current zoning that you've referred to does not implement the policies of the CDP with respect to the 2 sites. The CDP specifically suggests medium density apartments at 3 stories adjacent the medical building. The zoning that historically has been there probably prior to the creation of the CDP and a carryover from West Carleton zoning doesn't reflect that at all. And if you have read the community design plan for the village of Carp, for the fairground lands, you will see that the designation for it is for fairground lands, but with the recognition that if the city and the fairgrounds are unable to acquire the properties, then the properties will be developed in accordance with the multi-res designation adjacent to it without a need to amend the plan. So we have not filed any amendments to the CDP because the application that we have submitted is in conformity with the CDP. And I can tell you the first thing Sarah and staff would have told us when we filed our application, if it didn't conform to the CDP, they would have asked us to file an application to amend the CDP, which they did not.
Thank you, Jack. Final question, Mary. Yep.
Okay, to come back on, sorry. Yeah, and maybe I'll just take up more of the specifics of that question with Sarah and a few others to make sure I understand the process a little better. But I just wanted to then maybe react a bit to Jack's focus on the and it relates to Jerome's comments earlier as well about in the spirit of the community plan. And because, you know, it did point out that one of the priorities also was more open space. And I know that someone brought this up earlier that the plan so far has townhouses backing onto Langstaff. And I don't think that really speaks to a streetscape that is evident anywhere else in Carp. And I think that, you know, being a property owner who happens to be facing the back end of those townhomes, I'd like to see, you know, some consideration for a walking park, maybe along that whole strip, say a 50-foot setback that would connect to the existing trail system or walkways that have been proposed and connect that portion really to the fairgrounds and the soccer fields and make it continuous, a nice flow through there. And it would provide some respect to the homeowners as well, that a 50-foot setback with some trees and a winding path with park benches would give us some buffer space from, you know, I guess my comment would be, I've seen the artist rendition, and of course there are no fences, and you can well imagine what the fence line would look like when you're facing that from your front porch. So I'm not sure if that's more of a comment, Charmaine, but it's a proposal as well that I hope Sterling will consider in the process as well. Thanks for the time.
No, thank you very much, Murray, for that. I think Jack has noted that, and he will take that comment back. And that's what we're here tonight, is to hear those comments and those suggestions from the community. So thank you so much, Murray, for that. Our next question will go to Barbara.
Hi, thank you very much for coming back to me. Just one quick comment and hopefully one quick question. When we're looking at the traffic, I know that people are talking about, you know, sort of a certain point in time during the weekday. I don't know if there's any other sort of things that can be looked at. For example, the soccer field is absolutely packed several nights a week and on the weekends when there's soccer games going on. And, you know, I drive down the road all the time and we have to be extremely careful because people and kids are going back and forth. Plus there's traffic coming out of the fairgrounds. Most people take Carp Road, but some take that one. Also, if there's, you know, some special thing like, I don't know, the dog thing or like the dog show or horse things or something. I don't know if that's part of what you look at, but it's just when I picture that stretch in my mind, those are the kinds of things that I see. So that's just a comment. The question that I had really was, I noticed that the number of units that are being applied for has changed quite a bit from the initial time that the application was put in. And I'm just wondering if Jack could kind of walk us through those increases and, you know, whether he thinks that there's going to be another range of increases potentially coming forward for approval besides what we have now at 193.
Thank you. Jack, will there be an increase? And can you just walk through how the increase has occurred?
So I think, thank you very much. I think as the plan evolved and we worked with the comments we are receiving from the city with respect to the location and the number of the apartment buildings, the buildings moved and their size changed and the unit count changed. I don't think it increased that drastically.
Jack, it's hard to hear you. Don't.
Oh, sorry, I'm pointing the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly.
I was saying as the plans evolved and we worked with staff after the pre-consult, the location of buildings changed and designs changed, and as a result of that, the unit count may have changed slightly. But the unit count that is before you today is the unit count that we have applied for, and it will not be increased.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jack. Okay, thank you, Barbara, for the question. I will go now to Allison. Allison, you're on.
Oh, thank you. I guess I have a lot of comments, so I know we don't have time, but I'm going to ask a question that's a little narrower. I'm concerned about the lack of focus on the impact of the traffic on the entire community. I live at 317 Donald B, and I've submitted a letter. We have tremendous issues all along Donald B with the speedway, as we call it, coming up from March Road. So I'd like to know from the transportation, I guess is it Mark? I'm not sure. It sounds to me like a lot of the traffic concerns are being kind of dismissed. And when you refer to it as background numbers and data, these are human beings trying to get along or around in what is supposed to be a walkable community. So I guess I'd like to know if the traffic or transportation study will be reviewed. And I'd also like to know if the John Street issue could be reviewed as part of that. Because we want a walkable community, but we can't have a walkable community if we've got 300 more cars a day going up and down Donald B and trying to turn on to Langstaff. So.
Okay. Thank you, Allison. So what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to ask Mike and Sarah to take that away. And that's feedback that we received loud and clear tonight is about the traffic and the impact on the community. So if they could take that away and see, confirm what date the last study was done and see if another study is required or not. But I think that would be best that they'll take that away and circle back. And so I hope that is amenable to everyone, because loud and clear that traffic is an issue that I'm hearing tonight. It's 8:11 and I have lots of questions, so I just want to make sure. And also I want to remind everyone, this is your opportunity for the public forum. You have the opportunity for your comments and your feedback. Please, I will reiterate at the end that there's still time to provide that feedback. There's a comment sheets that are in the chat function. I will at the end provide Sarah's email address again, and also that the DevApps, there's the comments that you could go there as well. So just to give you a few different ways to provide your comments. So next is Dan.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And first, I want to say thanks to all the panel members. And, you know, it's tough being up here getting all those questions. And I think you guys are doing a pretty good job. And I want to thank all my community colleagues and peers too, because you're asking some great questions. I'm not going to beat that dead horse on the traffic thing. It sounds as though it's a pretty hot topic. I would invite Mike to come out sometime. I'll get you a coffee at Alice's and we can have a look at what the community is like. I was wondering if maybe we could draw some attention to the speedway. While it is nice to have it kind of rough and tumble, it slows cars down. It also does a number on our shocks and springs. Wondering if we could get any kind of commitment, if there isn't already one there, from Eli or the city to improve Donald B. Monroe between, say, the Meadowridge Circle area as far as DECA. That's a pretty tough road. And if you're asking all of these people to come down into the main downtown section of our village, that road is atrocious. So I was wondering if we could get maybe a comment on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Who would like to take that? Councillor, would you like to answer that, please? Okay, Councillor.
Thank you, Dan, for the question. And if you think Donald B is a speedway now, just wait till we pave it. So every time we pave roads, the next email we receive, thank you for paving our road. Can you please do something about the speed? So, but we did some of the work on the sidewalks. I think you saw that this year. And I think the road, Donald B, we are, based on a budget consideration, is slated for 21-22 to be repaved. So hopefully we can deliver with the budget restraint lately, but that's what it's slated for. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, the next question, Bernard. Okay, are you unmuted?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Charmaine. And thank you for everyone to be able to take my question here. My first, it's an observation to Sarah, which will be followed by a question to Jack here. So recently, the Financial Post referred to two Canadian studies that was done recently with respect to aging population, seniors and boomers, 55 plus. Both studies actually compare pretty well identical. Roughly around 90% of all surveyed and individual studied indicated that they are not planning to move as seniors and downsizing. They do not want to downsize. They want to live as long as possible in their own home. The study referred to or indicated that the only time that they see seniors and boomers as downsizing and moving or in cases of separation, divorce, or widowed. So my question here is to Jack here. I understand that this is being targeted as a 55 plus community, a retirement community, and I understand that the laws in Ontario and the regulation that cannot specifically prevent anyone from renting in those places. But the fact that studies are showing that boomers and retirees are really not downsizing and moving in retirement community, and the fact that you promoting this as a retirement community, one of the ways to do this would be the size of the housing or the size of the apartment. So are we looking at small unit, since studies are showing that most likely are single individual that are retired, and there may be a couple here, but are we looking at small unit, for example, I don't know, 800 square feet for an apartment and maybe a townhouse to 1,200 square feet? Are we looking at a certain size that will target seniors?
Okay, Jack, do you have a response or is that noted? Do you have a response, Jack? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Certainly working with our architects and looking at our market information and the information we're getting from other sites. As I said, we're still working on the design of the units. The townhomes will be, as I said, bungalow with the ability to have a loft. So very similar to some of the designs you see in some areas of the western portion of the city already. The apartment unit sizes will be a variety based on the size of the building. And they will reflect the needs of how we perceive the market to be. And so as we get more detailed with the site plan, with the building designs for the townhomes, and filing the site plan applications for the apartment buildings, we'll have far better knowledge of the actual square footages.
Okay, thank you, Jack. I'm just going to move. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to move quickly. We only have 13 more minutes. I'm going to put Allison Green, who had connectivity problems, is now Alice. Sorry, you've blocked my view. Alice Mack, you're on, please. So Allison.
Hi, thanks for giving us this opportunity tonight. So like many people have raised issues with traffic tonight, I as well have some pretty big concerns about traffic in our community. With the 20% increase in the number of people living in the village based on just this new neighborhood. One of the things that hasn't been addressed is parking. I've lived in a private rental community before, and one thing that was always a huge challenge was finding a parking spot, finding parking spots for visitors, finding parking spots for people subletting these units. And I know that what happens is there's a spillover onto public roads. When the spillover happens, it causes further congestion on an already concerning piece of road in our community. I'm concerned for people living on Langstaff. I'm concerned for parents needing to find parking spaces to drop off their kids at school. I'm concerned as a person who goes to the doctor's office and the physiotherapy office at the medical clinic and how hard it is to find parking already. So I know that what will happen is people will park on Francis Colbert, people will park on Kavanaugh, and and even probably try to park in the school parking lot and the medical center parking lot. So I think that that's something that really needs to be addressed. So if Sarah, maybe the planner, could speak to this of what's happening, because I've been told that there will be parking for residents, and that will include underground parking. But what number, like how many parking spaces are going to be provided for a community that could have 400 plus people living in it?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Allison. Sarah, we're now on to parking. So could you please speak to the parking strategy? Thank you.
Yeah, so as I said before, I'll start with the apartment buildings. When we're looking at a plan of subdivision, we're looking at blocks of land and compatibility between uses. We're not specifically looking at the number of parking spaces at this point for the apartment buildings. What we're looking at in subdivision is this area appropriate for an apartment building? At the site plan control stage, again, which is a public process, that's when we get into the details of what is the size of the apartment building, how much parking is provided. We refer to, I'm just looking up this section, we look at part 4 of our zoning bylaw, which is available online, which lists different parking rates for different uses, depending on the area of the city that we're looking at. I don't have the rates in front of me right now. If you'd like me to provide those to you, send me an email and I can provide you the direct link to the zoning bylaw with those rates. In relation to the bungalow towns, I do look at the zoning bylaw for, again, those minimum rates. I don't have them in front of me. I can provide them to you, but we do look at those to ensure that the minimum requirements are being provided. And the zoning bylaw does look at a combination of visitor and resident parking when looking at those rates.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. You will get that information, so that's great. Thank you. Jack, you have a comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to add, this is not a private development. The roads that we are putting in are public streets. So they're to a much higher standard in terms of road width and pavement width. They're similar to Kavanaugh, to all the other neighborhood streets in the area. It's not a private street as you referred to in your previous, where you lived previously. And second of all, in our zoning application, we have not requested any change to the parking requirements of the City of Ottawa. We will meet and exceed the requirements of the City of Ottawa for parking on the site.
Okay, thank you, Jack, and thank you, Allison, for the question. We're only going to have time for 3 more questions, and in the queue is Linda, Mart, and Mitchell. So Linda H., you're on, please. Your question. Linda? Yeah. I can barely hear you. Okay. Can you hear me? No, I can't hear you. Pardon me? Just a second. I'm turning up the mic. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Not really. Faintly. If you maybe yell into your phone, I'll be able to understand your question. Sorry about that. Try again. No, I can't. I can hear you a little bit. Okay, well, my concern, there's the thing with the folks' home. That study was done a long time ago before we had, just a second, before we had. Now I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. That study, I'm talking about for the seniors. That study was done quite a long time ago before we had the 2 seniors buildings built. So we have addressed seniors in the community, so that should be noted. So I don't know if it should be all seniors, and you're not going to get seniors, just seniors. I know my mother probably couldn't afford to live in the community. What is the rental range? Do you have an idea on that?
Okay, thank you. Jack, any comments on that?
When you're asking about the rental range, are you talking about the rental rate for a unit? It will be dependent on the standard of the unit, its size, the number of bedrooms, the square footage, etc. The rates haven't been set yet, but they will reflect the market in the area for sure.
Okay, thank you, Jack. And thank you, Linda, for the question. I'm going to go now to Mart. Mart?
Hello.
Yes, I can.
Hi, thank you. First, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us tonight. I very much appreciate it. And many of my fellow community members have actually echoed a lot of my sentiments. So these may come out as comments more than questions. But I do have a significant concern around the significant increase in urbanization and density and how it fits our community, but more so the safety. We're talking about an increase of 27% in the number of dwellings that will go into the community. These will be all on an 18-acre parcel of land, which in relation to the actual size of the village, although it sounds large, is not large. That is a lot of density in a small area, a significant increase all coming out onto Langstaff. And Langstaff, for anybody who lives there or has to commute through it, is a busy street with the school. And I know everybody said that, but we have traffic calming signs in the middle. We have parents dropping off their kids. We have kids darting in and out of cars. It is a tough enough area to navigate, and you increase the density by 27%, all coming out right at that spot. That's a significant concern to me. We haven't changed our infrastructure, and I don't believe the infrastructure can handle it. The previous commentator or previous person who just commented actually kind of touched on the point I wanted to touch on, if the fact with the addition of the seniors community, and we also already have an adult lifestyle community that has been put in, as well as the Rivington community, which have a lot of bungalow towns, and you see a lot of seniors in there. I think we've really addressed that quite a bit. So I would like to maybe understand what we will have in there. And again, you know, if we're going to end up targeting younger cohorts, are we going to have more people living in the homes than the 2.1% average, which means, again, more cars, more traffic. So traffic is a significant concern to me. We don't have stuff like grocery stores. We want to be a walkable community, but we don't have a lot of the amenities that you would find. And we don't I can't speak on behalf of the community, but I moved out of a town home area with high density to be in an area that isn't as crowded. So this does concern me. I've seen the street spillover that people have talked to. So traffic, I don't think can be underplayed, regardless of whether it was taken in April 2019 or August 2019. I think it really is a serious concern when you're having it all come out onto one street, that amount in that area. And there has been significant changes since the original proposal, and it happened quite quickly, and there wasn't community consultation. So that also does concern me. So I do appreciate the opportunity to speak here. But I think with this plan, there's a significant number of concerns that I have, especially with the changing environment now that we've moved into a COVID world. There's changing desires and needs in terms of condo, single home dwelling. That's going to change the makeup of what the community will look like. And I'm not sure that's necessarily being reflected in a plan that's a little bit older than the current. So thank you. I appreciate the time to speak. Thank you.
No, thank you for your comments. I know everyone is noting and taking those comments. And so thank you so much for that. And our final question, there will be an opportunity for everyone to send your comments for additional questions to Sarah and the different. I will go through those, but Mitchell, you'll have the final question. Over to you, Mitchell.
Thanks, Charmaine, for letting me have the final one here. I've got two things. I think the first is to Jack Sterling here about really interpreting the CDP. I know that the residential multi-unit section talks about the lack of affordable housing in the village for seniors and young people, and whether he thinks that's appropriate to use the entire parcel of land that's intended for a multi-unit dwelling to target only one of those demographics, being the seniors community. So I think that's an important thing. And given that Kyle, I think you're on the call as well, the owner was quoted in the community voice saying that the subdivision would be cost prohibitive for young couples. So I'm wondering how we're addressing the affordable housing need by building a cost prohibitive senior targeted community.
Okay, thank you, Mitchell. So the question is the interpretation of the CDP. It mentions both the affordability for seniors and the youth, and then also the affordability of the rental units. Jack, are you the best person to take that question? Okay, over to you, Jack.
Thank you very much, Mitchell. The question of affordability is a significant question across the entire city of Ottawa. It is something that is mandated provincially and with the city of Ottawa. There are plans that the city of Ottawa has and funds being set aside for the provision of affordable housing, but the city does not have the authority to mandate affordable housing in developments. So what usually happens through the process is the affordability or the pricing of units and the pricing of an area is driven entirely by the market. For example, there was not an outcry for affordable housing in Hidden Lakes when it was developed. There was not an outcry for a requirement for affordable housing in the Rivington community. Those townhouses are now trading in the $500,000 plus. So affordability, while it's an issue in the city of Ottawa, it's an issue that's controlled by the city of Ottawa and the province and through Ottawa Community Housing. And the industry can assist in playing a role, but cannot be the ultimate solution for it.
Thank you, Jack. So that ends our question and answer period. I'd like to thank everyone for your patience. And so also I'd like to thank you for inviting me into your home because this is a little bit different than we're in a community center. You've now invited me into your home, so I really appreciate it. I always appreciate people's passion and enthusiasm for your community, and also that you're very respectful in your questioning. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be able to moderate this session this evening. I just want to put up here a little bit about, again, how you provide your input and participate. I'm going to leave that on the screen as I ask the councillor for some closing remarks. Over to you, Councillor.
All right. First of all, thank you so much, Charmaine, for hosting the session tonight, and thanks to our staff, especially Sarah and Adam Brown, who's been on the call, and all city staff actually has been on the call. Just a small correction. I hope Jerome is still listening. We got the latest information for 2019 census. The village of Carp has 768 dwelling in 2019. And the population, believe it or not, was 2019 as well. So I hope you're still listening. I heard somebody talk about grocery. I think there is a commercial development land in the community. I'm hoping it will be developed one day, but the walkable community, we take pride in this. It's a walkable village. You can, no matter where you live in the village of Carp, you can still walk to the main street for a meal or for the pharmacy or any amenity, and to the bank, and then walk at home. So we like to continue building on that sentiment, right across the village and right across this process. Again, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of you, especially our residents who took the time to come to speak to us. If you have any question, you can send it to Sarah, copy me, or if you don't have Sarah, send it to me. I'll make sure to send it to Sarah as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And please, I'll just leave that up just so you can write that down. We're still taking your feedback. I appreciate your feedback and thank you. And I hope you have a good evening and stay safe. Thank you.